There's something rather peculiar happening in the world of spirituality and consciousness. As more people awaken, as more individuals begin to see beyond the veil of conventional reality, they often find themselves caught in an unexpected trap. They glimpse truth, they taste freedom, they experience moments of profound clarity, and then they begin to apologize for it. They dim their light. They translate their depth into palatable sound bites. They contort their authentic realizations to fit into the very frameworks they've begun to see beyond. It's as if they're caught between worlds, too awake to fully participate in the old paradigm, yet too conditioned to fully embody the new. But what if I told you that this apologetic stance, this constant self-diminishment, isn't just unnecessary? It's actually counterproductive to both your own continued awakening and to the evolution of collective consciousness. What if the very things you've been apologizing for are precisely the aspects of your awakening that need to be honored, expressed, and lived without compromise? What if your attempts to make your awakening acceptable to those still asleep is the very thing keeping both you and them from experiencing deeper truth? If you enjoy this type of deep reflection, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And most importantly, leave a comment below telling us if this has ever happened to you, or if you know someone who passed through this. You see, spiritual awakening isn't just about having nice insights or pleasant experiences. It's a fundamental shift in how you perceive and relate to reality. It's a dissolution of the boundary between observer and observed, a recognition of the constructed nature of the separate self, a direct experience of the interconnectedness of all things. And when this shift begins to happen, it changes everything. How you see yourself, how you relate to others, how you understand the nature of existence itself. This isn't a small adjustment to your current worldview. It's an entirely different order of perception. The problem arises because we live in a culture that has no context for this shift, no framework for understanding it, no language for describing it. And so when it happens, when you begin to awaken, you find yourself increasingly at odds with consensus reality. Your values change, your priorities shift, your understanding of what matters, what's real, what's worth giving your energy to, all of this transforms. And the people around you, those still operating from conventional consciousness, often don't understand. They may feel threatened, confused, or concerned by the changes they see in you. And that's when the apologizing begins. You start to doubt your own experience. You begin to wonder if maybe you're the one who's wrong, who's confused, who's lost touch with reality. You try to translate your insights into terms that won't disturb others. You downplay the depth of your realizations. You hide the parts of your awakening that seem too radical, too threatening to the status quo. You apologize, implicitly or explicitly, for seeing what others don't yet see. But here's the truth. If you are spiritually awake, there are certain things you should never apologize for. Not because you're better than others, not because your awakening makes you special or superior, but because apologizing for these aspects of your experience diminishes both your own continued unfolding and your ability to serve as a clear embodiment of possibility for others. So let's explore these 5 things that, if you are spiritually awake, you should never apologize for. The first thing you should never apologize for is your changed relationship with conventional success. As you awaken, you may find that the traditional markers of achievement, wealth, status, position, possessions, no longer hold the same appeal they once did. You may find yourself naturally gravitating away from the relentless pursuit of more, bigger, better, toward a simpler, more essential way of living. You may find yourself questioning the value of climbing ladders that lead nowhere meaningful, of accumulating resources you don't truly need, of seeking validation from systems you no longer fully believe in. And when this shift happens, the people around you, particularly those who still measure worth by conventional metrics, may become concerned, confused, or even judgmental. They may see your changing priorities as a form of giving up, of failing, of losing ambition. They may worry that you're throwing away your potential, wasting your talents, or making a grave mistake. And in the face of this concern and judgment, it's tempting to apologize, to justify, to try to explain your choices in terms they can understand and approve of. I remember speaking with a woman, let's call her Sarah, who had been on a fast track in her corporate career, rapidly climbing the ranks, accumulating accolades and rewards. But as her awakening deepened, she found herself increasingly disconnected from this path. The competitive environment, the focus on quarterly profits over human well-being, the constant prioritization of growth over sustainability, all of it began to feel not just unappealing, but actively harmful. And so, she made the decision to step away, to create a simpler life with more space for what truly mattered to her. Connection, creativity, contribution of a different kind. The reaction from her colleagues, friends, and family was swift and intense. They couldn't understand her choice. They saw it as a waste, a failure, a concerning sign that something was wrong with her. And initially, she found herself apologizing, trying to justify her decision in terms they could understand. Burnout, work-life balance, stress reduction. But these explanations felt hollow, inauthentic. They weren't the real reason. The real reason was that she had glimpsed something more true, more essential, more aligned with her deepest nature than the path of conventional success could offer. And that glimpse had changed everything. The breakthrough came when she stopped apologizing for her changed relationship with success, not in an oppositional way, not by criticizing those who still found meaning in conventional achievement, but by simply owning her truth without justification or excuse. "This is my path now," she began to say. "I understand it may not make sense from the outside, and that's okay. I'm not asking you to approve or even to understand fully. I'm just asking you to trust that I'm following what I know to be true for me." The second thing you should never apologize for is your need for solitude and silence. As you awaken, you may find yourself increasingly sensitive to the energetic environment around you. The constant noise, the incessant stimulation, the relentless pace of modern life, all of it may begin to feel overwhelming in a way it didn't before. You may find yourself needing more time alone, more space for reflection, more silence to hear the subtle voice of truth within you. You may find yourself naturally withdrawing from environments that once felt normal but now feel depleting. Crowded social gatherings, busy public spaces, even certain relationships that carry a heaviness or dissonance you can now perceive but couldn't before. And this withdrawal, this increased need for solitude, often triggers concern or judgment from others. In a culture that values constant connectivity, that equates busyness with importance and social engagement with health, your desire for time alone may be seen as antisocial, avoidant, or even selfish. Friends may feel rejected. Family may worry you're becoming isolated. Colleagues may question your commitment, and again, it's tempting to apologize, to force yourself to engage at levels that deplete you, to ignore your own energetic needs in order to meet others' expectations. But here's the truth. Your need for solitude isn't a pathology. It's a natural and necessary aspect of the awakening process. Just as a caterpillar must withdraw into the chrysalis to transform into a butterfly, just as a seed must burrow into the dark soil to become a tree, the awakening human needs periods of retreat, of quiet, of turning inward. This withdrawal isn't an escape from life. It's a preparation for a more authentic engagement with life. It's not a rejection of others. It's a cultivation of the inner resources that will allow you to offer something genuine when you do engage. I once worked with a man who, as his awakening deepened, found himself increasingly overwhelmed by environments he had previously enjoyed. Busy restaurants, crowded concerts, even large family gatherings. The cacophony of energies, the competing demands for attention, the surface-level interactions, all of it began to feel not just unpleasant, but actively disruptive to the clarity and presence he was cultivating. And yet, he continued to force himself to engage at previous levels, apologizing when he couldn't, feeling guilty about his changing needs. The shift came when he recognized that his need for solitude wasn't something to overcome or apologize for, but something to honor as a valid and important aspect of his journey. He began to communicate this to others, not with shame or defensiveness, but with clarity and ownership. I'm in a period of my life where I need more quiet, more space for integration, he would explain. It's not about withdrawing from connection, but about connecting in a way that feels sustainable and authentic for where I am now. And remarkably, when he stopped apologizing for this need, when he began to honor it as a natural and necessary part of his process, most of the important people in his life were able to adjust, to understand, to respect his boundaries. Some even expressed envy, admitting that they too felt overwhelmed by the constant stimulation of modern life, but had never given themselves permission to step back, to create space, to honor their own energetic needs. The third thing you should never apologize for is your changing perspective on what's important. As you awaken, you may find that your values and priorities shift significantly. Things that once seemed crucial, career advancement, material acquisition, social status, may fade in importance, while aspects of life you previously overlooked, authentic connection, creative expression, service to something larger than yourself, may move to the center. You may find yourself deeply questioning systems and structures you once took for granted, economic, political, educational, religious. You may find yourself increasingly unable to participate in activities or conversations that feel trivial, superficial, or misaligned with your deepening understanding of what matters. This shift in perspective often creates friction with those around you who still prioritize what you've begun to see beyond. They may experience your changing values as a judgment on their choices, even when it's not intended as such. They may feel uncomfortable with the questions you're asking, the assumptions you're challenging, the alternatives you're exploring, and in the face of this discomfort, it's tempting to downplay your evolving perspective, to pretend you still value what you used to value, to apologize for seeing things differently. But this apology does a disservice both to yourself and to others. It denies your own authentic evolution and deprives others of the opportunity to encounter a different perspective, to consider possibilities they might not otherwise be exposed to. This doesn't mean you need to impose your views on others or criticize their priorities. It means you allow your changed perspective to be visible, to be expressed when relevant, to be lived without apology or pretense. I remember a conversation with a woman who, after a profound awakening experience, found herself increasingly unable to engage in the gossip, complaint, and judgment that had previously formed the backbone of her social interactions, particularly with a certain group of friends. For a time, she tried to participate as she always had, forcing herself to join in conversations that now felt toxic and draining. When she couldn't maintain the pretense, she would apologize, making excuses for why she wasn't contributing, why she was leaving early, why she seemed different. The breakthrough came when she stopped apologizing for her changed perspective and instead began to gently redirect conversations toward what now felt meaningful to her. Questions of purpose, explorations of consciousness, discussions about how to live with more presence and authenticity. She didn't criticize her friends for their interests, but she no longer pretended to share them. She didn't try to convert anyone to her view, but she no longer hid it. And while some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the change, others were intrigued, even inspired. Her unapologetic embodiment of a different way of being created an opening, a possibility that some were ready to explore. The fourth thing you should never apologize for is your direct experience of deeper truth. As you awaken, you may have experiences that don't fit within conventional frameworks of understanding. Moments of non-dual awareness, direct perceptions of interconnection, insights into the constructed nature of the separate self, experiences of consciousness beyond the body. These experiences may be difficult to articulate in ordinary language, challenging to explain to those who haven't had similar insights, impossible to validate through conventional means. And in a culture that privileges rational understanding, empirical evidence, and consensus reality, these direct experiences of deeper truth are often met with skepticism, dismissal, or concern. They may be labeled as delusions, fantasies, or signs of mental instability. They may be pathologized, medicalized, or marginalized. And in the face of this invalidation, it's tempting to doubt your own experience, to apologize for insights that don't fit within accepted paradigms, to translate your direct knowing into more acceptable terms, even when those terms distort what you've actually perceived. But this apology, this diminishment of your direct experience, is a profound form of self-betrayal. It's a denial of what you know to be true at the deepest level. It's a submission to a collective agreement about reality that you've begun to see beyond. This doesn't mean you need to insist that others accept your experience as valid for them. It doesn't mean you need to proselytize or convince. It means you honor what you've directly perceived, without apology or excessive qualification, even when it doesn't align with conventional understanding. I once spoke with a man who, during a period of deep meditation, had experienced what he described as a complete dissolution of the separate self, a direct recognition that what he had always taken to be him was actually a construct, a story, a center point created by thought rather than an inherent reality. This insight had transformed his entire relationship with life, bringing a profound sense of peace, freedom, and compassion. But when he tried to share this experience with others, including his therapist, he was met with concern, with suggestions that he might be experiencing depersonalization disorder or some other form of mental disturbance. For a time, he doubted himself, apologized for his experience, tried to force it into psychological frameworks that didn't actually fit what he had perceived. But the truth of what he had seen directly couldn't be denied, couldn't be explained away. The breakthrough came when he stopped apologizing for his direct experience and instead simply owned it as his truth, without needing external validation or approval. "This is what I've seen," he began to say. "I'm not asking you to believe it or experience it in the same way. I'm simply sharing what's true for me, what I've directly perceived." And remarkably, when he stopped apologizing, when he began to speak from this place of calm certainty rather than defensive justification, some people became genuinely curious. Not everyone, certainly. Many still dismissed his experience. But some recognized the authenticity in his words, the clarity in his eyes, and became interested in exploring the possibility that there might be aspects of reality beyond their current understanding. The fifth and final thing you should never apologize for is your inability to unsee what you've seen. Once you've glimpsed deeper truth, once you've tasted authentic freedom, once you've experienced the reality beyond conventional understanding, you can't go back to full participation in what now appears as a limited and often distorted view of reality. You may try. You may attempt to reintegrate into systems and structures that once seemed solid but now appear transparently constructed. You may force yourself to engage with concerns that once felt important but now seem trivial in light of what you've recognized. But these attempts at return inevitably fail, because awakening isn't reversible. You cannot unsee what you've seen. And this inability to fully return, to fully participate in consensus reality as if you still believed in it completely, often triggers frustration or even anger in others. They may accuse you of thinking you're better than them, of judging their choices, of abandoning shared values or commitments. They may pressure you to get back to normal, to stop being so different, to rejoin the collective agreement. And in the face of this pressure, it's tempting to apologize for your inability to fully return, to pretend you can switch off your awareness when it's inconvenient or challenging to others. But this apology is not only dishonest, it's ultimately harmful both to yourself and to those around you. It creates a split in your being, a disconnect between what you know to be true and how you present yourself to the world. It perpetuates the illusion that awakening is a temporary state that can be entered and exited at will, rather than a fundamental shift in perception that transforms your entire relationship with reality. And it deprives others of the opportunity to encounter an authentic embodiment of a different way of being, a living example of the possibility of seeing beyond conventional limitations. I remember a man who, after a series of profound awakening experiences, found himself increasingly unable to participate in the corporate culture that had previously been his entire world. The focus on profit above all else, the competitive dynamics, the environmental disregard, all of it now appeared clearly as a system built on distorted values and limited understanding. And yet his family depended on his income, his colleagues depended on his expertise, his community respected him for his professional success. The pressure to continue as if nothing had changed was intense. For a time, he tried to compartmentalize, to be awakened in his personal life, but to function normally at work. He apologized when his changed perspective leaked into professional contexts, when he couldn't generate enthusiasm for goals that now seemed misguided, when he suggested approaches that challenged the underlying assumptions of the business. But this split was unsustainable, creating increasing stress, internal conflict, and a sense of living inauthentically. The breakthrough came when he stopped apologizing for his inability to unsee what he'd seen, and instead began to explore how he could function within existing systems while remaining true to his deeper understanding. He didn't abandon his job immediately or judge those who still found meaning in conventional success, but he also didn't pretend to be unchanged. He began to bring his authentic perspective into his work in skillful ways, to look for opportunities to introduce more conscious approaches, to embody a different way of being even within conventional structures. Some colleagues were uncomfortable with this change. Some dismissed his suggestions. Some avoided him, but others were intrigued, even inspired. His unapologetic authenticity created a space for questions and conversations that wouldn't have happened otherwise. His willingness to stand in his truth without imposing it on others, but also without diminishing it to make others comfortable, opened possibilities for evolution within a system that desperately needed it. So these are the 5 things you should never apologize for if you are spiritually awake. Your changed relationship with conventional success, your need for solitude and silence, your shifting perspective on what's important, your direct experience of deeper truth, and your inability to unsee what you've seen. But let me be clear about something important. Not apologizing doesn't mean being arrogant, judgmental, or superior. It doesn't mean imposing your view on others or dismissing those who see differently. It means simply standing in your truth with humility, clarity, and authenticity, without excessive justification, without defensive explanation, without shame or apology for the path you're on. Because here's the paradox: when you stop apologizing for your awakening, when you simply embody it with quiet confidence and authentic presence, you actually become more accessible to others, not less. You create an invitation rather than a barrier. You offer a living example of possibility rather than a theoretical argument or a proselytizing speech. Your unapologetic authenticity becomes a mirror in which others can glimpse their own deeper potential, their own forgotten truth, their own capacity for awakening. So if you are spiritually awake, if you have glimpsed something beyond conventional understanding, I invite you to release the habit of apology. not in an oppositional way, not by setting yourself against those who see differently, but by simply standing firmly in what you know to be true, by honoring your direct experience, by living authentically from your deepest understanding, without excuse, without justification, without diminishment, because in doing so, you not only honor your own awakening, but also contribute to the awakening of collective consciousness in the most powerful way possible through your lived example.